Hey everyone, welcome back to Strange Minds 6. I'm your host Ruby, and today we're going to be getting into Chapter 12 of Superstitions and Curses to Hex, Lambast, and Bewitch, and that's from the book of The Bizarre, Freaky Facts, and Strange Stories by Varla Ventura. But before we begin, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It would mean a great deal to me if you do. And without further ado, my dear friends, grab a snack, grab a drink, sit back and relax, and let's get to it. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble, fillet of fenny snake, in the cauldron boil and bake, eye of newt and toe of frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog, adder's fork and blindworm's sting, lizard's leg and howlet's wing, for a charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth boil and bubble. By William Shakespeare, Macbeth. Find a four-leaf clover. The belief that four-leaf clovers are good luck comes from the Druids, ancient residents of the British Isles. Several times a year, they gathered in oak groves to settle legal disputes and offer sacrifices. They ended their gatherings by hunting for four-leaf clovers because they believed a four-leaf clover enabled its owner to see evil spirits and witches and therefore avoid these things. Throwing pennies into a well. Some ancient people believed spirits living in springs and fountains demanded tributes, usually tributes of flesh. Young Mayan girls, for example, were sometimes tossed into the well to sacrifice. Well, they would marry the spirits. Today, people just toss the spirits a penny or two for luck. Knocking on wood. In the Middle Ages, churchmen insisted that knocking on wood was part of their tradition of prayer, since Christ was crucified on a wooden cross. But the tradition of knocking on wood actually started several thousands of years earlier, with a different deity. Both Native Americans and ancient Greeks developed the belief independently that oak trees were the domain of an important god. By knocking on an oak, they were communicating with the god and asking for his forgiveness. The Greeks passed their tradition on to the Romans, and it became part of European lore. The oak's power was eventually transferred to all types of wood. Opening an umbrella indoors. In the 18th century, spring-loaded metal-spoked umbrellas were new and unpredictable. Opening one indoors was courting disaster. The open umbrella could fly out of control and damage property or people. Therefore, opening an umbrella indoors was considered not so much bad luck, but just dangerous. Mirrors. Long ago, people looked at their reflections in water and were amazed because they thought they were glimpsing their soul. When the reflected image was altered by waves or ripples, they thought that their soul was in danger. Over time, this belief morphed into the belief that if someone broke a mirror, it would take 7 years for their soul to return to them. The term of 7 years was established by the Romans, who believed it took the body 7 years to repair itself. These beliefs eventually became the superstitions that breaking a mirror means 7 years of bad luck. Another superstition says that should a mirror fall and break on its own, a death in the home is soon to be expected. Even the house where the mirror breaks is thought to be cursed for 7 years. Looking at your reflection in a mirror by candlelight is also said to bring bad luck. Titus Livy said, "Superstition brings the gods into even the smallest matters." Candles. 1. Candles are shrouded in mystery and superstition. First of all, beware of a candle that blows out during a ceremony. It's a warning that evil is nearby. 2. 3 lit candles in a row are bad luck, so be sure to blow one out if you see them. 3. Light a candle inside a jack-o'-lantern on Halloween to guard against evil spirits that are lurking about. 4. If you look into a mirror by candlelight, you not only risk giving yourself bad luck, but you also may find the souls of the dead. 5. A corpse candle is a small, sourceless flame that floats through the night air and is believed to be a lost soul. This sight is considered an omen of death. Salt. For thousands of years, superstitions about salt have been incorporated into religious, domestic, and business practices. Because salt could preserve food, people thought it had the power to protect them as well. Salt was poured into wells to purify water against evil and placed on the chest of a corpse before burial. Mothers even salted their babies, believing salt would lengthen their lives. In biblical times, people ate salt to ensure that business agreements would remain true, but salt was not always considered good luck. It was forbidden to speak the word salt while at sea for fear of the consequences. In supernatural workings, salt is also relied upon. It is often placed in the corners of a room before a spell is cast, correct? And people often take ritual baths to break harmful spells put upon them. It is also understood that when we spill salt, friendly spirits to our right are warning us that evil approaches on the left. Tossing a pinch of salt on the left shoulder or over the left shoulder staves off danger. Guests. Hundreds of years ago, people traveled very little. Communities were fearful of the world that existed beyond the boundaries of their village. Witches and ominous gods were thought to live among the surrounding mountains, valleys, and seas. People believed that the stranger knocking on their door could be a spirit in disguise. If not treated hospitably, the spirit could cast an evil spell on a home. So families welcomed strangers and treated them well, providing them with food and comfort, so that the spirit stranger would leave their home in peace when he or she moved on. Ladders. Historical explanations seem to justify the superstition that walking under a ladder brings bad luck. To the ancient Egyptians, the triangular shape of pyramids was sacred, and to walk under a ladder would be to break the triangle it formed with the wall. This act, they believe, would have deadly consequences. The Christians believed that the triangle formed by a ladder leaning against the wall represented the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. If you were to walk under the ladder, you would be violating the Holy Trinity. It was also feared that when you walked through the ladder-based triangle, you walked with the devil. In more recent times, tall ladders were used to take down the corpses from the noose after someone had been hanged. It was believed that if you walked under that ladder, the dead person swinging from the gallows above would watch you pass, and then you too would meet your death. It was also feared that the body would fall onto those who crossed below the ladder. Hungarian views. Traditional Hungarian culture is rich with superstitions. Here are a few of the most prominent recorded by famed Hungarian witch Susanna Budapest in her book The Holy Book of Women's Mysteries. 1. If your left palm itches, money is coming to you. If the right itches, you will soon spend the money. 2. If salt is spilled from its container, let the one who upset the container clean it up. Otherwise, poverty will strike the house, bringing great fights over money issues. 3. If you place a loaf of bread upside down on a table, there will be fights in the home. 4. If your nose itches, you have adversities. 5. If you are traveling to visit someone without an appointment and a bird flies across your path, forget the visit. The person will not be home. Brooms. There are many superstitions surrounding brooms. You should avoid placing a broom against your bed because the broom's evil spirit will cast a spell on the bed. Don't let a broom sweep over your feet if you ever wish to be married. And never step over the handle of a broom lying on the floor, because doing so is believed to bring death. If you drop a broom, company will arrive. If you sweep trash out your door at night, it summons the visit of a stranger. And if you forget to sweep out the room where an unwelcome guest has stayed, that guest may return. To prevent additional bad luck, never take an old broom with you when you move. The Black Cat. The black cat is the most common enchanted animal of the mystical world, often the companions of witches, yes. Black cats are believed to have the power to reason, perform sorcery, and understand human language. Just about everyone knows the superstition that says when a black cat crosses your path, bad luck will follow. But there are ways to counteract this omen. As soon as you spot the black cat, spit on the ground, turn yourself around 3 times, or walk backwards, retracing your steps. As you pass the cat, reach down and stroke its back as a gesture of kindness. See, that's what they don't tell you. There's a lot more to the superstitions than just the short little versions of them. Vampires. Vampires first appeared in Slavic folk tales about 1,000 years ago. Villagers blamed disease and death, which were completely mysterious in those days, on corpses that only came out at night and sucked people's blood. Eager to rid the village of this malevolence, I can never say that word right. People often dug up graves and dispatched those corpses that bore signs of being a vampire by impaling the body's heart with a stake or beheading the body. The vampire could be permanently put to rest. To keep the undead out of the house, garlic and religious symbols were thought to work. The undead could also be destroyed by exposure to daylight. Over the years, the vampires of legend have acquired various characteristics such as human, superhuman, strength and speed, hypnotic mind control abilities, and inhuman stealth. But you'll notice that many details of the old superstition remains to this day. Evil is just a point of view. Anne Rice. Afterbirth, burning placentas. In the 17th century, midwives had a custom of saving a woman's afterbirth or placenta and then burning it. The superstition was that the number of times the burning placenta popped indicated the number of children the mother would expect to have in the future. Apple blossoms. An apple blossom is said to be a sign of sickness in a house. If you are superstitious, never bring a branch of an apple blossom into your home. Ash trees and calamities. In the 19th century, every summer, some people would examine ash trees to see whether or not they produced any seed. The barrenness of an ash tree was said to be a sure sign of public calamity. Aged and wise men maintained that the ash trees of England produced no seeds in 1649, the year in which King Charles I was beheaded. If 13 people sit down to eat at a table together, one of them will die within the year. Oof. Baby magic. It has been said that if a baby looks at you from between its legs, you will get pregnant. Bats, friend or foe? In the 19th century, it was said that if a live bat was carried 3 times around the house and then nailed outside of the window with its head downwards, it would have the effect of a counter charm. Nowadays, it is considered lucky if you see a bat flying around on its own in the daytime. But if you disturb a bat and make it fly, you will have bad luck. Even more disturbing is the belief that a bat coming into your house is a sign of an impending death in the family. Beans, beans, bad for the mind. Sleep in a bean field all night if you want to have awful dreams, or even worse, go crazy. 2. A common superstition among miners says that accidents in the mining pit occur more frequently when bean fields are in bloom. Bed lore. 1. It is said one should never sleep with his or her feet toward the door, because only corpses lie like that. Oh, I didn't know that. 2. Some believe that it is unlucky to get out of bed backwards. 3. In Scotland, there is the belief that it is unlucky to leave a bed while making it. If the bed making is interrupted, the occupant of the bed will pass sleepless night, or some much worse evil will befall him or her. 4. Some believe that if 3 people take part in making a bed, there is sure to be a death in the house within a year. If somebody is ill and suddenly asks for a mug of hard cider, he or she will soon die. Superstitions of the rich and famous. John Madden. When John Madden was coach of the Oakland Raiders football team, he wouldn't let the team leave the locker room until running back Mark Van Egen had belched. Oh, wow. Stonewall Jackson. Confederate General Thomas Stonewall Jackson always charged into battle with his left hand held over his head, allegedly for psychic balance. Alfred Hitchcock. The cameo appearance Alfred Hitchcock made in each film he directed was for good luck. Michael Jordan. Former Chicago Bulls star Michael Jordan always wore the shorts from his college basketball uniform under his professional uniform. As long as I have these shorts on, I feel confident, he said. It is believed that if you cry on your birthday, you will continue to cry year-round. The Barrymores. Lionel, Ethel, and John Barrymore always gave each other an apple on the night of a show's premiere. Jimmy Connors. Jimmy Connors wouldn't compete in a tennis match without a little note from his grandma tucked into his sock. Jake LeMond. The late actor Jake LeMond always whispered "magic time" as filming started on a new movie. Thomas Edison. American inventor Thomas Edison carried a staurolite, a stone that forms naturally in the shape of a cross. Legend has it that when fairies heard of Christ's crucifixion, their tears fell as these fairy cross stones. Sterilite was also a lucky stone for U.S. Presidents Theodore Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson. Greta Garbo. Actress Greta Garbo always wore a lucky string of pearls. Mario Andretti. Race car driver Mario Andretti won't use a green pen to sign autographs. Kichiro Toyoda. A fortune teller told businessman Kichiro Toyoda that it would be good luck to change his company's name to Toyota and give the company's cars names beginning with the letter C, such as Celica and Camry. John Wayne. Actor John Wayne considered it lucky to be in a movie with fellow actor Ward Bond. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Superstition is the poetry of life, so that it does not injure the poet to be superstitious. John McEnroe. Tennis player John McEnroe thinks it is bad luck to play a match on a Thursday, the 12th. He also carefully avoids stepping on a white line of the tennis court. Randy Johnson always eats pancakes before a game. Some of mankind's most terrible misdeeds have been committed under the spell of certain magic words or phrases. James Bryant Conant. Gypsy Curse. On October 6, 1997, the London Daily Mirror reported the football club in Middlesbrough had requested the services of psychic Uri Geller to reverse a gypsy curse. The football club's grounds had been built on a traditional gypsy camp, and the retaliation was simple, a ritual curse. The club reportedly suffered from continuous bad luck. It is unknown if the reversal worked. The Curse of James Dean's Porsche. Disaster may be ahead for anyone connected with James Dean's death car. In 1955, Dean smashed his red Porsche into another car and was killed. The wreckage was bought by George Barris, a friend of Dean's, and the man who customized cars like the Munsters Coffin Mobile for Hollywood. Barris immediately noticed weird things happening with the car. First, while being unloaded from the truck that delivered it to Barris, the car slipped and broke a mechanic's legs. Barris then put the car's engine into a race car. The race car crashed in a race, killing the driver. A second car from the same race was equipped with the Porsche's drive shaft. It overturned and injured its driver. Meanwhile, the shell of the Porsche was being used in a highway safety display in San Francisco. It fell off its pedestal and broke a teenager's hip. Later, a truck carrying the display to another demonstration was involved in an accident. The truck driver says one account was thrown out of the cab of the truck and killed when the Porsche shell rolled off the back of the truck and crushed him. In 1960, the Porsche finally vanished while on a train en route to Los Angeles. Wow, that's definitely a lot of bad luck. The presidential death cycle. Between 1840 and 1960, every U.S. president elected in the year ending in 0 either died in office or natural causes, or was assassinated. By contrast, since 1840, of the 29 presidents who were not elected in years ending with a 0, only one has died in office and not one has been assassinated. The first president to die in office was William Henry Harrison, elected in 1840. Other victims were Abraham Lincoln, elected in 1860 and fatally shot in 1865. James Garfield, elected in 1880 and assassinated in 1881. William McKinley, re-elected in 1900 and fatally shot in 1901. Franklin D. Roosevelt, elected for the third time in 1940 and died in 1945. And John F. Kennedy, elected in 1960 and assassinated in 1963. Ronald Reagan, elected in 1980, was nearly the 8th victim. He was shot and badly wounded by John Hinckley in 1983. Astrologers insist that Reagan was exempted from the curse because 1980 included an astrological aberration. Jupiter and Saturn met in an air sign, Libra. They say whether or not the curse is actually over remains to be seen. The next potential victim will be the president elected in 2020. And we all know who was elected in 2020. The curse of the Incan mummy. 3 Andine mummies were discovered by an archaeologist mountaineer in October 1995. They had been undisturbed in snow at the top of 20,000-foot Mount Amparo in southern Peru for at least 500 years. Then an earthquake exposed them. One of the mummies was the remains of a young woman, referred to by local shamans as Juanita. She had apparently been sacrificed to Incan gods. By disturbing the remains, the authorities are said to have brought bad luck to the Peruvian region. Within a year of the discovery, a Peruvian commercial jet crashed and killed 123 people near the discovery site. Then, 35 people were electrocuted when a high-tension cable fell on a crowd celebrating the founding of the city of Arequipa, which also is near the discovery site. Local shamans said these deadly disasters were the acts of the angered ice princess. To break the curse, the shamans gathered in the city of Arequipa in August 1996 and chanted, "Juanita, calm your ear." Do not continue to damn innocent people who have done nothing to you. Apparently, it worked. No deadly accidents have been reported in the region since 1996. The Curse of Tosca. Productions of Giacomo Puccini's opera Tosca have been plagued with problems at least as far back as the 1920s, when during a production at the Metropolitan Opera, the prop knife with which the heroine Tosca murders the villain Scarpia at the end of Act 2 failed to retract. Singer Antonio Scotti was stabbed in 1965 at Covent Gardens. Maria Callas's hair caught fire while she was singing the title role. The flames had been put out by a quick-thinking Tito Gobbi, who was playing Scarpia. Then, in a production of Rome that same year, Gianna Raimondi's face was scorched during the firing squad scene in Act 3. In 1993, Elizabeth Neaton Printy, in the scene in which Tosca commits suicide by leaping from a building, jumped off the wrong side of the stage in St. Paul, Minnesota, and plunged more than 30 feet to the ground, breaking both her legs. The last reported incident was 1995, when Fabio Armiliatou, starring in a Roman production, was hit in the leg by debris from blanks fired in the Act 3 execution scene. Wow, I don't even know what to say with that. He was taken off stage on a stretcher. 2 weeks later, he returned to the stage and fell and broke his other leg in 2 places while standing in the wings at the end of the first act. Goodness gracious. The Sports Illustrated jinx. For decades, sports stars have claimed that appearing on the cover of Sports Illustrated magazine was the fastest way to a slump or defeat. Studying the records of 58 baseball players going back 1955, researchers found that there was a tendency for players' batting performances to decline by about 50 points from the time immediately before they get on the magazine cover until 3 weeks after the appearance. Scientists say that if there is anything to this jinx, it's only because it spooks players and thus is self-fulfilling, because being on the cover of a magazine draws attention to the player. He begins to feel self-conscious at the plate and focuses more effort on his performance. That self-consciousness and extra effort might in turn cause more injuries, fatigue, and other interruptions in the hitter's natural performance. As a result, his performance suffers. The Oscar Curse. Winning the much coveted gold statuette can ruin rather than help an actor's career. It started with Louise Rayner won back-to-back Oscars for The Great Ziegfeld, 1936, and The Good Earth, 1937. 2 years and 5 terrible movies later, she was considered a has-been. Hollywood columnist Luina Parsons wrote that Rayner was suffering from the Oscar curse. Rita Moreno and George Chakiris, 1961's Best Supporting Actress and Actor for West Side Story, disappeared from films after winning. Richard Dreyfuss, who won Best Actor in 1978 for The Goodbye Girl, raised his weight to 180 pounds, stopped bathing, and started bringing on booze and drugs after he won. Michael Cimino, the winner for the Best Director in 1978 for The Deer Hunter, followed his Oscar with 3 unsuccessful films: Heaven's Gate, Year of the Dragon, and The Sicilian. Linda Hunt won Best Supporting Actress in 1983 for The Year of Living Dangerously, and was last seen in the short-lived sci-fi series Space Rangers. This curse is considered quite credible in Hollywood. Oscars are accompanied by high expectations that can't always be fulfilled. The curse can also be attributed to winners' increased salary demands, typecasting, greedy agents or studio bosses, and stars who believe their own press and become hard to work with. The Curse of Lady Tichborne. In the year 1150, the saintly Lady Mabella Tichborne lay dying in her room at Tichborne Manor in England. For months she had lacked the strength to even sit by her window and overlook her beautiful rich farmland. She summoned her husband, Sir Roger de Tichborne, and shared with him her dying wish that a loaf of bread be given to all the poor once a year on Lady Day, a feast day of the Virgin Mary. But greedy Sir Roger felt no compassion toward the hungry and poor, and he quickly schemed to put an end to her request. He told his wife that he would distribute an annual gift in her name equal to the amount of land and could equal to the land she could walk upon, holding a lighted torch. Assured that she couldn't get out of bed, Sir Roger was certain that he had settled the matter. But Lady Mabella surprised him. She crawled out of bed, took the torch, and dragged her body around 23 acres of their estate. To this day, this parcel of land is known as the Crawls. Back in her bed, Lady Mabella gathered the household around her and uttered the Tichborne curse. If the yearly dole of bread was ever stopped, the Tichborne family would die out. So began the Tichborne Dole. The custom went on for 600 years until the local government got fed up with the influx of riffraffs that showed up for it and shut it down in 1794. Afterward, male Tichborne heirs began to die. Edward Doughty, a Tichborne ancestor who had changed his name, realized that the curse was in action when 4 of his brothers died without children. With the sudden death of his 6-year-old son, the only remaining Tichborne heir, he reinstated the Doyle, which has been handed out ever since. The Curse of the Screaming Skull. During the 17th century, Azaria Penny, a resident of Beddiscombe, a town in the heart of the English countryside, returned home after living in the West Indies for quite some time. Penny brought a slave home with him to help care for his house, known as Beddiscombe Manor. The slave unfortunately soon fell ill, and lying upon his deathbed requested one thing from his master. He asked that his corpse be sent home and buried in the land of his birth. Penny agreed, but when the slave passed away, he broke the promise and buried the slave in a nearby church cemetery. Immediately after the burial, a strange moaning drifted up through the earth under which the slave had been buried. Before long, the moaning turned into an endless and agonizing scream, which tore through the countryside. Upon finding out about Penny's broken promise, the local villagers demanded that he immediately dig up the body and remove it from the cemetery. Penny did as told, and returned with the body to Beddiscombe Manor, where he stored the body in the attic. The tortured screams ceased. The corpse remained in Penny's house, where it decayed over time, until all that remained was the skull. As the years passed, Beddiscombe Manor saw many owners come and go. Some did not take well to sleeping so near the infamous skull that made the mistake of removing it from the attic. One owner threw the skull into a nearby pond, thinking it would sink, but the skull rose to the surface, shrieking in anguish. Another family buried it in the backyard garden, but it dug itself out of the ground. In the end, the skull was returned to the house, where it is said to reside peacefully to this day. The Curse of King Tut's Tomb. For centuries, thieves broke into the tomb in Egypt's Valley of the Kings and ran off with gold and treasure. Modern-day archaeologist Howard Carter was certain that one untouched tomb remained, undiscovered and untouched, the tomb of King Tutankhamun, a mysterious pharaoh who had died at the age of 18. For 30 years, Carter was obsessed with finding the king's tomb, but by 1922 he felt like his luck was running out. Carter's digs had been funded by his friend, Lord Carnarvon, who was losing a fortune and didn't want to spend any more. But Carter begged for one more dig, and he got the funds for it. He began digging in the last unexplored part of the valley, and in November 1922 uncovered a descending staircase. Excited beyond belief, Carter called his benefactor and had him join him immediately. On November 26, 1922, Carter scraped a hole through the doorway of King Tut's tomb. Over the next few days, Carter and Carnarvon broke through the sealed doors and found rooms filled with gold statues, furniture, jewelry, and other invaluable objects. They also found a frightening message on a clay tablet: "Death will slay with his wings whoever disturbs the peace of the Pharaoh." Fearing that the Egyptian workers who were with them would flee if they saw the inscription, the two men hid the tablet away. King Tut's tomb soon proved to be the greatest archaeological discovery of all time. The curse, which reached the newspapers after Carnarvon sold the story, became the most famous in history as headlines around the world announced the curse of the pharaohs. The curse's first victim was Lord Carnarvon, who died of an unknown disease just 5 months after the discovery of the tomb. An American journalist who had helped unseal the tomb fell into a coma and died shortly after Carnarvon. A friend of Carnarvon's, who had come to visit the tomb, died the next day. A radiologist who took x-rays of King Tut's mummy died after returning to England. The death toll continued to climb, and by 1929 the curse had been credited with claiming 22 lives. Oddly enough, the archaeologist Howard Carter survived the curse and died of natural causes in 1939 at the age of 64. The curse of the Hinemoa. The ship Hinemoa, I might not be saying that right, so do forgive me if I'm not saying it right, was named after the beautiful daughter of a very powerful New Zealand chief in 1892. The ship set sail on the first voyage of what would become a chilling history of terror. A string of bad luck for its first captains revealed that something was very, very wrong with the steamer. The first captain went insane and had to be replaced. The second captain fell victim to foul play and was thrown into prison. The third became a drunk and, shaking from DTS, lost his job. Captain 4 mysteriously died in his cabin, and captain of the fifth voyage committed suicide. The next time the Hinemoa set sail, it lost its balance and turned over. Righted again, it went to sea once more and put its curse on 2 sailors who were washed overboard into the Pacific during the trip. This terrible and ghastly curse continued until the last voyage of the Hinemoa in September 1917, when it crossed paths with a deadly German submarine. Shortly thereafter, the Hinemoa sank, bringing the curse to a watery end. The Hinemoa's faithful crew knew why the ship was cursed. They claimed that deadly forces entered the ship when it was being built and were stored up in the vessel's heart. How did these forces arrive, and in what form? The first ballast, heavy material used to give the ship stability, was gravel from a London graveyard. Oh wow. And that, my dear friends, is where we are going to end it. Tune in next video for Chapter 13, The Dark Side of the Moon, UFO Stories, and Bizarre and True Lunar Facts. And until then, my dear friends, this has been Ruby, signing off.